Going to call the order the Finance Committee meeting for November the 7th, 2017. Before we get into the items on the agenda, we will have special recognitions at this time led by our mayor.
Could we get Matt Burleson to join us up front here along with myself and with the council and staff? Come on, let's do it the way the
All right.
we going? Mm-hmm.
Yes, I try to be.
I'm not photogenic anyway.
Matt Burleson. Matt started his career at the Muskogee Police Department September 2006 as a patrolman and transferred to the Special Investigating Unit 3 years later, where he investigated narcotics and violent crime offenses. After being promoted to sergeant on June 1, 2016, Matthew transferred back to patrol, where he started as a field training officer for new recruits. After a year in the Patrol Division, Matthew was then assigned to the Investigations Division. He is currently working as an investigator assigned to work property crimes, assaults, and frauds. While working in the Investigation Division, Matthew has been able to put his multitude of abilities to use and has had numerous successful outcomes in his investigations. Utilizing Matthew's wide array of skills, he is also assigned to serve as the Police Department's Policy and Procedure Committee. Now, you're going to enjoy this last paragraph. It's most interesting. Matthew enjoys spending time with his wife and his daughter on his days off, and he enjoys the outdoors and fly fishing. It gets even better. Matthew has a great sense of humor and is known to be a bit of a jokester at times. Matthew tells us that he is an avid dog lover, is and has a beloved blind pug, James Pugglesworth the 13th.
All true.
That's true?
Absolutely. We can pass my phone around. I can see his picture.
Who he enjoys, this is the part that's interesting, who he enjoys carrying on long walks in the park. Matthew is our Employee of the Month, and we want to say thank you to Matthew, and we'll give you the microphone if there's something you want to say, and then we'll all shake hands and give you a certificate.
Okay, sure. Do I have a time limit, first of all?
Yes.
Oh, 3 minutes? I don't know if I could go 3 minutes.
It's fine, but you
No.
only have 3 minutes.
I really appreciate everything the city of Muskogee's done for me. I work for a great department. There are great leaders at our department, and I think that they have directly reflected on how I try to do my job every day. And I'm just grateful for everybody I work with, and I'll do the mic drop, or I can hand it back to you.
Explain to us how you named your dog that name. How'd you select that name?
Well, I don't know. I enjoy the name James. It's a common name, and I won't forget it. And Pugglesworth just kind of set in as a toy name. He's a little ugly dog, but you got to give him something to go off of. I don't know.
And the 13th. Is this the 13th dog?
He's had 13 opportunities to not die. He lost one eye one time and ended up almost dying on the operating table. They did CPR on him. True story. They called my wife and said, "Hey, he's dying. Can you come over here?" Oh, wait, we got him back breathing. So it's a weird deal. Anyways, I don't have anything else, but I do appreciate everything.
We'd all like to shake hands with you if you would.
Yeah. I know. I thought about getting one of those things you strap on your chest.
We're doing a Kelly. No, we're doing. There we go. A motion. Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
We'll keep this and add to it. All right. We now want to recognize some folks that are retiring from their employment with the city of Muskogee, and we want to express our appreciation to them. Would Stanley Perkins, Johnette Blevins, Jackie Surrey, Bob Elsey, and Esther Mitchell join us. And I think there's 3 of those that are here, and if you would join us up front, we would appreciate that.
Unless you call me Vicky, I'm not going to.
Did I say one wrong?
Vicky, sir.
How did I do that? Vicky Surrey. I'm sorry. Where'd I come up with Jackie? Who knows? All right, we're going to go around and shake hands with you, and we have a special recognition plaque. And why don't, when you have the microphone, tell us how many years of service, if you would. Stanley?
My name is Stanley, and I worked 35 years and 9 months with the Muskogee Fire Department. I took that job. I thought I would find something better, but I never could find it. But it was a great job, and I worked with a lot of great people there.
My name is Bob Elsie. I've been here around 18 years, and I really enjoyed every minute of it. Thank you all very much.
Vicky Surrey, Public Works Department, 17 years approximately, and it's been quite an experience thanks to a lot of people. It was fun.
If you would, we would all like to shake hands with you, and then we'll give you your plaques.
His wife is not what I expected. Did you see her at the party? She's right behind Jim Lynchie.
Or behind who?
Jim Lynchie.
Oh, I didn't see her.
Read just quickly. Life is not measured so much by the quantity of days, but by the quality. That's very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, I think she did.
Oh, okay.
Yes, all good.
Another stuff like that. Group is cheap. Councilman, how you doing? Oh,
Gloves on because of this.
oh Lord, you sit next to us.
He uses them on the chest when he's doing
They had one for everybody out there.
That's what he likes. In a hole or something, he can see it.
I already broke mine.
Take anything besides the vitamin C?
We'll move on at this time to our agenda items. Item number 1, please.
Consider approval of Finance Committee minutes of October 17, 2017.
After review of the minutes, are there any corrections or additions?
Move the approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Are there any discussion? Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Hale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Copeland.
Yes.
Item number 1 passed. Item number 2, please.
Consider approval of claims for all city departments October 12, 2017 through October 31, 2017.
Do we have a report from the purchasing committee?
Yes, sir. The purchasing committee met earlier today and reviewed the report of claims, and I move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that we approve the claims. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Hale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Item number 2 passed. Item number 3, please.
Consider approval of resolution number 2708 declaring one parcel of property as surplus property, more particularly described in the resolution as surplus to the needs of the city, and authorize the conveyance of said property or take other necessary action.
Mr. Garvin?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the city of Muskogee went out for bid on one parcel of property located at 809 South Main Street. We only received one bid. The bid was from Jeffrey Hicks in the amount of $363. Mr. Hicks is the abutting property owner, and we'd recommend approval of the resolution. Be glad to answer any questions.
Move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve this item. Any discussion, questions? Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Copeland.
Yes.
Item number 3 passed. Item number 4, please.
Consider approval to accept a Muskogee Medical Center Foundation grant in the amount of $26,600 to be used to fund the medical director position for our EMR, first responder, fire departments, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, the city of Muskogee and our fire department make medical runs. To do so, they need a medical director. Historically, that's been provided in a cooperative agreement through the county and the county EMS. That agreement was not renewed, and so we had to find our own medical director. We have done so. We've also asked the Muskogee Medical Center Foundation to grant us the money to help pay for that cost, and so that's what this grant is for. It is to cover $2,000 a month for that position, and then $2,600 to cover the physician's increased malpractice insurance. And it's for a 3-year grant, allowing us to continue these services with no out-of-pocket cost to the city. We recommend approval of receiving the grant.
Any questions from Mr. Miller?
Is this position going to be someone that's already on staff that's going to go?
No, this is a medical doctor. This is
subcontract.
it's a physician. Yes.
Okay.
Move the approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Reed, I believe we have someone who signed up to speak.
Okay, I do apologize. We will call to speak before us at this time is Teresa Rutlinger. You have 5 minutes to speak on this item, and if you could, please state your address.
Teresa Rutlinger, 2500 Shelby Court. I don't know if I can direct these to Mr. Tucker or not, but I have some questions as far as the difference between the Muskogee Medical Center Authority and the Muskogee Medical Center Foundation. Why were they both established? Who supposedly are supposed to be the beneficiaries of these two entities? I don't think they were set up for one person to get a salary. I thought, my thought was that I thought it was for indigent medical health care for our citizens, and just paying one person doesn't seem like that's exactly what, in my thought, that was for. I don't know, maybe if you can explain exactly what.
Well, unfortunately, since that's a separate legal entity from the city, I don't represent that entity. But
Okay.
the executive director of both of those is here today, who may be willing to answer those questions. I don't know much about the foundation. I'm obviously familiar with the Muskogee Medical Center Authority, but it's my understanding that the foundation was set up as a funding mechanism so that a certain percentage of the assets could be granted for medical type services. I don't recall that there were any requirements that it be for indigent individuals, but that would be more appropriately answered by Mr. Blair.
Sure. I'm Jim Blair, president of Muskogee Medical Foundation. I want to clarify what used to be called, when MRMC was in existence in a municipal hospital, they had a separate public foundation that was a separate board from the authority, referred to as Muskogee Medical Center Foundation. After the sale, at least 10 years ago, to Capella, the name was changed to Muskogee Medical Foundation, with the mission to provide assistance that has anything to do with the health and welfare of the general Muskogee area. So over the past 10 years, they've assisted in providing the free flu shots, done Meals on Wheels, a Good Shepherd Clinic. There's been a number of things. We've assisted. I know we bought some computers for Indy Capital Votech. We've done Kevlar Fest for EMS just recently. And this was brought to our attention. It fits right in the mission of Muskogee Medical Center Foundation. It is a separate entity. It doesn't have a, when we did the establishing the new City of Muskogee Foundation, the State Attorney General specified we needed to make sure there was a certain amount of funds set aside to meet the mission of the original trust indenture, which was health and welfare. And that's what this entity has continued on as doing. Hope that answers that question.
And to further clarify, if I may, this allows 90 firefighters to provide medical treatment to our citizens that otherwise they could not. So the really purpose is not to provide one person a salary. So the purpose is to allow 90 firefighters to provide the EMR service that we've asked them to do. And otherwise we cannot do without having a medical director.
And if I could plug, this entity also hosts a Christmas meal that you're all invited to on Christmas Day. So come join us for Christmas dinner.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion?
Yeah.
Well, this physician, is he going to be on call 24/7? Is he going to be there permanently? I mean, most physicians aren't going to quit their regular job and do that. Is it just one of those, I am the figure, I will sign paperwork, or how is that working?
I'd like our
That
fire
amount
chief
of money.
can address that about what the actual duties of the medical director are.
To be a EMR agency with the state of Oklahoma, we have to have a medical director. That medical director, we work under his umbrella. He oversees our training. That doesn't mean that he trains us. It just means that he knows what we're training on. He signs off on it. Our patient care reports that we do after every incident go to his office. He looks them over to make sure that everything's being done correctly. If they're not, he notifies us to make corrections, and if we don't make corrections, then he comes on site and counsels us on how to make these corrections. The biggest thing that he does is he provides us a medical license to function as EMRs within the state of Oklahoma. You cannot do it without his medical license. So that's basically what he does. He provides for us. Up until now, we were used EMS's medical director, but he is no longer providing that service. That's why we're going this direction.
So he provides professional oversight.
Correct. Which is, you cannot be a emergency medical service in the state of Oklahoma without a medical director, and they have to be an MD.
Understand. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions? Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Item number 4 passed. Item number 5, please.
Consider approval to authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute a transition agreement from Spectra as a third-party contractor to the city of Muskogee for operations of the Civic Center or take other necessary action.
Mr. Miller.
Yes, as you all know, Spectra assumed operations in the Muskogee Civic Center in 2015. The city's evaluated their performance to date. We've had discussions with Spectra about how to possibly terminate that agreement in a way that is mutually pleasing to both parties. And we do believe that is possible. We think that we may be able to do it even within the budget allocated for this fiscal year. There is a possibility that we may go over, but we've gone over every year that we've had Spectra as our contractor, and so we feel that this, if we do terminate and negotiate an advantageous exit to that, that this would be the last year that we would be involved in that going over budget for the Civic Center. So I'd ask that you give us the opportunity to negotiate that and execute the agreement. That would be mutually beneficial.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Miller, there would be no disruption to existing contracts that's been negotiated. City would assume all those existing contracts.
Yeah, very good question. That is part of the contract itself that we have with them. That should there be a termination, that those contracts pass on to us, we have a good working relationship with them as far as knowing what events are coming up, and we feel confident that we'll be able to deliver a quality service to people that have rented the building, and we would still be able to obviously continue to book things through the Civic Center and hope to do so through the transition period.
Thank you for that clarification.
I'm excited about this. And in the future, I hope we really take in consideration of things when we start trying to outsource our city to private entities. Just kind of glad that some of this is coming to an end and we can move forward.
Any other comments or discussion? Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor James Scully?
Yes.
Janie Boydston?
Yes.
Patrick Kale?
Yes.
Marlon Coleman?
Yes.
Wayne Johnson?
Yes.
Ivory Van?
Yes.
Derek Reed?
Yes.
Dan Hall?
Yes.
Mayor Coburn?
Yes.
Item number 5 passed. Item number 6, please.
Consider approval to apply for the 2018 State of Oklahoma Emergency Management Performance Grant in the amount of $25,000 to be used to fund emergency management operations or take other necessary action.
Chief?
Chairman, Council, as you know, Mark Bolding, or perhaps you don't know, Mark Bolding, the Emergency Management Director, is on medical leave, and we are the backup source for that department. It came to us, and Deputy Chief Chad Farmer has completed that grant, so I would let Chief Farmer address any of the issues in regards to this grant.
Good afternoon. Came up, I don't know, 3 or 4 meetings ago about the 2017 grant that never got brought in front of you to accept. This is the 2018 version. This is just the application for us to put in for that grant. It's the same one we've done for many years. It's a 50-50 grant. The current emergency management budget that we have pays for that 50% on our end. It's a performance-based grant, so we get quarterly payments as long as we meet certain goals of that grant. So happy to answer any questions.
I'm glad to see us apply for this grant. I'd like to move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor James Scully?
Yes.
Janie Boydston?
Yes.
Patrick Kale?
Yes.
Marlon Coleman?
Yes.
Wayne Johnson?
Yes.
Ivory Van?
Yes.
Derek Reed?
Yes.
Dan Hall?
Yes.
Mayor Coburn?
Yes.
Item number 6 passed. Item number 7, please.
Consider approval to purchase 11 DigiTicket electronic ticket books from Saltus Technologies for $35,144 or take other necessary action.
Chief?
Mr. Chairman, what we're wanting to do is increase our DigiTicket machines that allow us to process information much more quickly, and also to import that information directly into the city clerk's or city municipal court record system. These DigiTickets that we have, we've got 5 right now. We're wanting to trade them in and then use $35,000 that was that we originally had planned to use for out of capital outlay for our in-car video system. And what we've learned is that won't fix our problems with our in-car video system. So what we want to do is take that money and apply it to these DigiTickets and buy 11 of them and trade 5 of them in.
Chief, I've got a question.
Sure.
This appears to be a system that saves duplicity, duplicate tasks. Back in the old day, I guess, how would that work? We'd write a ticket and then bring it in, and then somebody else would key it into the computer and so on and so forth?
That's exactly right. This is Lieutenant Pickering. He processed this grant for us, so he can answer any questions that you have in regards to this process.
Yeah, basically the ticketing system, it's an automated system. You have a handheld device. You swipe the offender's driver's license. It automatically populates all the information. You have the ability to take a picture of them, because the last several months we've had several occasions where the Oklahoma Department of Public Safety's called us and said these people claim they're not the ones that got the ticket, and we've had to go through a little bit of a 3-ring circus proving who these people are. But the expediency, it's an officer safety deal. Officer goes up, the time on per traffic stop is cutting virtually in half because the officer, like I said, it's all automated. The contact with that person is therefore cut in half, preventing any unforeseen circumstances as far as people pulling up on you, things of that nature. The Saltus Technologies, the part of this agreement, we get the new updated software. It's got enhanced analytics. All that's free, comes with the deal. We get the most updated handheld ticket machines that they have.
So not only does this help the officer on the scene, but it saves extra processing work back at the station.
Extra processing work.
I love things like this.
And we don't buy paper tickets, as many paper tickets anymore, so it saves us in that respect as well.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Item number 7 passed. Item number 8, please.
Consider approval to receive donated funds for the month of September 2017 in the amount of $727 for the city's animal shelter sponsorship program as per the attached list, or take other necessary action.
One more time, Chief.
Feel like I'm the whole agenda today. $727 is what we received in the month of September. This goes to our spaying and neuter program, and I would request that we receive these monies.
Move for approval. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Item number 8 passed, and with that being, that's our final item for Finance Committee.
We'll now call to order the Public Works Committee meeting for November 7th, 2017. Item number 1.
Consider approval of Public Works Committee minutes of October 17, 2017.
Any additions or changes?
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
And the motion carries. Item number 2, I'm sorry.
Hold a public hearing and take action on the approval of ordinance number 4031A, rezoning the property located at 4421 Dennison Street, more particularly described in the ordinance, from R1 Single Family Residential District to C1 Local Commercial District, and if approved, authorize staff to revise the official zoning map of the city to reflect said change or take other necessary action.
We're now in a public hearing. Mr. Garland?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the applicant, Cassandra Logan, is requesting approval to rezone property from the R1 Single Family Residential District to the C1 Local Commercial District. The property is located at 4421 Dennison Street. The reason for the rezoning is to allow a daycare center to be located on the property. They are asking for a daycare center, which is 8 or more persons. A daycare home is 7 or fewer. Looking at the existing zoning land use, starting with the site itself. Currently, the site is zoned R1, and there is a single-family dwelling. To the north, which is across Dennison Street, zoned R1, single-family dwelling. To the south, which is back behind the property, is zoned R1 and is undeveloped property. To the east is also zoned R1, single-family dwelling. And to the west, which is across 45th Street, is also zoned R1 and a single-family dwelling. Now, if you look at the land use map adopted by the city of Muskogee, it does indicate single-family residential within this area. Therefore, rezoning this to C1 would not comply with the comprehensive plan and land use map. Also, rezoning a commercial piece of property within a residential area would be considered spot zoning. Yesterday at our planning commission meeting, we did have around 10 property owners who attended the meeting opposing the request. They had a spokesman, Jim Ritchie, spoke for the property owners. He also presented a petition to Planning Commission with 21 signatures opposing the request. Staff and Planning Commissions both recommended denial. Be glad to answer any questions.
Mr. Tucker, I don't believe I have anybody signed up to speak to this, but I will assume this is Miss Logan. Is it all right for me to have her speak, even though we didn't sign up?
If she's the applicant, she's serving in a quasi-staff position. So yeah, we always allow the applicant to speak.
Making sure we're not bypassing anything. I need your name and address, please.
I'm Cassandra Logan, and I stay at 4421 Dennison Street.
Okay.
So when I originally filled out my application, that never was for it to be commercial. I wanted multifamily. So I have a daycare home or 7. So if I did multifamily, it just give me 5 more kids. So which is 12 kids, and I can't have no more than that. So I never knew that it would go to commercial, which if it go to commercial, that means like a convenience store or something can be put in there. That's not what I was wanting. So I was originally under the impression that I could do multifamily. So when I filled out the application, that's what I put on there. But when I got here yesterday, it was saying that it could be commercial, which means it could turn into anything if I move out of the house. Is that correct?
I'll address
Thank
that.
you, Mr. Gar-
Previously, before the zoning regulations was changed back in 2014, it was allowed as a special exception underneath the multifamily zone. When we changed the regulations, now it's no longer allowed within multifamily. You have to have, for a daycare center, you have to have a commercial zoning, which has to be C1 or higher. The only time it's allowed in residential now is single family, duplexes, I think the R3 also, but you also have to go through the Board of Adjustments to get those approval. I talked to Ms. Logan, and I think her name was Thomas, who also called me, and told them basically that it would have to be a commercial zoning to have it there. Also told them that it would be considered spot zoning. We really would not recommend the zoning within this area. So all that was made known up front.
So when he goes back to 2014, I was under the impression whenever I turned in my application that the rules have been the same since 19 something. So if that's the case, then why come anybody else can spot zone with multifamily and I can't? Because they approved one not too long ago over in Erna Heights. So I don't understand that part. So if the rules been the same since 2014, then how's anybody else getting a home with multifamily? And it's only 5 more kids. It's not going to be 20 or 30 kids there. It's just 5 more kids.
There's
Whenever I first before I turned it in, I talked to, is it Mr. Gavin?
Yes.
I talked to Mr. Gavin, and he told me that he wouldn't approve it. So then when I turned in my application, his secretary called me, and she said, Cassandra, we're just going to send you your money order back. And I said, why? She said, because Mr. Gavin said he's not going to approve it. And I said, well, that's discrimination because y'all not even accepting my application and letting me go to the hearing to get it discussed and see if it can get approved. And so then he called me back probably an hour later, and him and Miss Thomas was all on the phone discussing it. And he was saying that it was commercial. And I said, well, I was under the impression that it was multifamily because there's other daycare homes here in Muskogee that's been approved for multifamily. They're not considered as commercial because they only have 12 kids. They don't have no more than 12 kids because you can't have it and DHS won't allow it.
Could I ask Mr. Garvin a question? Have we done any multifamily approvals since the termination of that policy in 2014?
No.
Okay, so you're referring to things that we had done prior to the city's changes in 2014?
No, Mr. Gavin told me that the rules have been the same since 19, I can't remember the year, but he said 19 something. I don't know if
what she's referring to is she asked me about the number of kids. I told her that as far as the number of kids between the daycare center and the daycare home, it's changed a little bit, but basically years ago, DHS had, I think it was 5 kids was a daycare home. Anything above that was a daycare center. The city of Muskogee had the same. A few years later, DHS changed the regulations to allow 7 kids as a daycare home. We took it back for a planning commission, city council. We changed ours to 7. And then I'm not sure how many years ago it was now, DHS moved it up to 11 kids. We went back to Planning Commission. Planning Commission said, no, we're going to leave it at 7 or fewer for a daycare home. What she's referring to was the number of kids and the difference between the daycare home, which is allowed, and residential dwellings. That is approval as long as it's 7 or fewer. Having more than that is a daycare center, and you have to go through the rezoning process. Yes, prior to 2014, you could, in an R4 multifamily, have a daycare center upon approval through the Board of Adjustments. That has changed. No additional R4s have had special exceptions for a daycare center since 2014.
I think we spoke of this at the meeting the other day. It seems to me, and there's no guarantee, and wouldn't want to represent that there would be one, but it seems to me that the only viable option would be to petition us to change the requirements of
the number.
Now that DHS has gone to 11 or 12, then it would be legal for us to adopt having 11 or 12 in your home today. But and I'm not sure that this body would want to go there. I would certainly entertain the thought, but I don't see, from my perspective, us doing spot rezoning to resolve this issue. I just don't see that going anywhere. So there may be another avenue to get there, but spot rezoning is going to be a tough. I just don't see it happening.
It would take an amendment to the ordinance of the regulations to increase it from 7 to 11. It would have to be published. It would have to go through Planning Commission, Public Works, and City Council for final approval. We did have some lengthy discussions about it in 2014 when Planning Commission went through and reviewed all the zoning regulations when we was making those changes. And there was a lot of discussion about it. And at that time, they felt like 7 would be an appropriate number for a residential area within a home.
But that's what I paid all my money for, is for it to get done. So I don't see why that would be an issue. And Mr. Gavin never told me he told me the rules have been the same and they have not changed since then. He never said nothing about 2014. If he would have told me that, I would have never put my application in. I know what he told me. And I know what his secretary told me as well whenever I put in my application in my money order. She called me back and told me that they weren't going to accept my application.
When an application is submitted to the planning department, it is recommended that they talk to the planning director for a recommendation. I informed them that my recommendation would be to deny the request based on the comprehensive plan and the land use map. I'm telling them that in case they wanted to withdraw the request to save them the money, because it is costly to go through this process. There's an application fee of $200. It has to be published in the paper. You have to get a list of property owners. So I told her our recommendation would be denial. She wanted to go on through with the zoning request, so we processed it.
Mr. Garvin, excuse me, I guess one of my concerns is if we've kept up with DHS every time they changed, why didn't we keep up with them this time?
Because the Planning Commission, at the time when they reviewed it, felt like that was too many kids within a residential area. They felt like 7 would be an appropriate number within a residential neighborhood for a daycare home. They felt like anything above that should be more of a commercial classification.
So what would be the difference if I had 12 kids and I stayed there? What would be the difference?
A couple other issues. Once it's zoned commercial too, you cannot have a residential dwelling and a commercial business on the same property unless it's a home occupation, which this would not comply with the home occupation requirements. That's the other issue. Another issue that would have to be addressed, you have different building code requirements for daycare centers than what you do for daycare homes. So even if this was rezoned, there would have to be some building standards the structure would have to comply with to meet the building code requirements for a daycare center, which would also be very costly.
So there's no other way that we could go back to multifamily like it used to be. They can't do that no more.
Not without an ordinance change.
That would be heading backwards from where we're heading.
Okay. I don't see how though, but okay. All right.
Seeing that no one else has signed up to this issue, we're going to close the public hearing. Mr. Garvin, any more questions for him, or?
If you did a spot zoning, my understanding would be that once you establish that commercial zoning, then in the future, if the daycare were not there and it were spot zoned, it would still be a commercial application for that facility.
Yes. And
So
any
a person
commercial,
could take anything that's under a commercial classification, C1, and open any of those businesses within that zoning.
which is a lot of offices and personal service uses, small animal hospital, some restaurants.
Some things that don't fit in a residential neighborhood.
Yes, yes. And plus, it'd be hard to deny any future zoning within that area. And additionally, you're going against the comprehensive land use map, so you'd need to make some changes to it also.
Okay, thank you.
Two things. I wouldn't mind taking a second look or having staff put together some materials for us to review. Maybe it's nowhere we want to go or not. I wouldn't mind taking a look at meeting the requirements that DHS has given now and given that another look. Not that that's the thing that everybody would consider to be a smart thing or not. Spot zoning, in my opinion, is going down a road that we don't want to go, because then we'll have more and more people. One thing that does concern me in all this, and I am certain that Mr. Garvin tried his best to communicate properly on this, but I'd like to consider if, because of the miscommunication, and I don't believe it was on Gary's part, that we look at maybe a refund on this application if we can in one way. I think that would be appropriate, because she was confused about what her intentions were, and it was never going to happen. He tried to communicate that, but I think she got confused in some of this other talk, and if that's something we could do, I'd sure like to take a look at that.
Well, one thing I'd like us to look at is what would it look like if we followed the actual DHS rule that's out now? Because, excuse me, if DHS has said it's okay for 11 in a home, they base that on something. And so I'd like to see us go through that process to see what that was, the same as when we went from one number to another number to another number, so that we can have a more informed determination on how we make our decision. Because if we would have followed what DHS is doing like we had done previously, this issue wouldn't be before us today.
Correct.
So what's the pleasure of this committee? Do we want to table this?
Well,
and
no,
come back?
I think that what I would do is deny this spot zoning, but ask staff to give council some information on what DHS rules are, and look at the minutes or notes or visit with Gary over what led to the last decision of not kind of following the ramp up of DHS, and kind of go from there, along with, if we can, a refund of this issue of misunderstanding in the communications of the. If she had have been in her mind, and she got confused, but if she had have understood this was the way it was going to go, and this what it was all about, I don't think she would have went forward with her application. She had she got confused about this multifamily business and what have you, I believe. I'm quite certain you tried your best to explain.
Yes,
I
and
know that.
She had another person who I think rezoned property years ago to R4 that was on the phone with us also. It's
Might have led
going
to
against, I mean,
hearing different
I was
things.
trying to explain to them, but it wasn't coming through.
So is that a motion?
Yes. Boy, can you put all that together?
Maybe. Second.
I have a motion and a second to deny the application with the caveat that we will refund her application funds and then direct staff to review the housing authority's regulations for 7 to 11. Does that sound right?
Yeah,
DHS? Okay.
So a yes vote or a no vote gets what we want.
A yes vote is to deny.
Okay, thank you.
Is that right, Mr. Tucker?
That's absolutely correct.
Just making sure.
I'm in agreement that I want the applicant to get their money back, but I still think that we, on practicality, before this came to us, should have been given the benefit of knowing why we didn't go from 7 to 11 and have more. Because, ultimately this wouldn't have been to us. Because what I want to know is if the new change only allows for 5 more kids, have there been a problem with the 7 that she's already managing? And I want those type of metrics and statistics so that we don't have to be in a situation where we deny an applicant where otherwise we might not have.
And I think that's part of the direction of staff to come up with that. Any other discussion? Have a motion and a second to deny? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully?
Yes.
Janie Boydston?
Yes.
Patrick Kale?
Yes.
Marlon Coleman?
No.
Wayne Johnson?
Yes.
Ivory Van?
No.
Derek Reed?
No.
Dan Hall?
Yes.
Mayor Coburn?
Yes.
To reiterate, this passage, this yes vote denies spot zoning, but asks staff to come up with the research and plan so that we can move forward on looking at or maybe rethinking the new DHS rules and giving a refund.
Mhm.
Okay.
No, this motion denies this applicant. This
The
motion-
rezoning, but she
Yeah.
gets her money back, and they're going to look in at moving it to from 7 to 11.
But it doesn't deny spot zoning holistically. It denies this one applicant.
No.
No,
All we're denying is the spot zoning.
No, you're denying the application.
That's what I thought. We're denying the application. That's what we
Which
voted.
would result in spot zoning.
Okay.
Yeah.
I brought that for
Without
you.
wasting a bunch of time, after staff reports to us, we can take it up at a date here in the not too distant future to re-look at our DHS rules and regulations and how everything jives up. Okay.
Well, and it may not be to go to 11. I mean, when the planning commission took that up, it may be that it goes to 9. When you're looking at 11 different vehicles coming into a residential area for pickup and drop off of students, that may be part of the reasoning. It may be that 9 vehicles in a residential area. It may be, I think that was some of it that went into, that could have been a lot of what went into the zoning commission. But I think it needs to go back to the zoning commission to look at what was that reasoning, where they can have a recommendation that would come back to council.
Okay.
At least visit that anew.
Yep.
So I believe that motion carried?
Yes.
Very good. Item number 3.
Hold a public hearing and take action on the approval of ordinance number 4032A, rezoning the property located at 318 South Cherokee Street, more particularly described in the ordinance, from R1 Single Family Residential District to I1 Light Industrial District, and if approved, authorize staff to revise the official zoning map of the city to reflect said change or take other necessary action.
We are now in the public hearing. Mr. Garvin.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the applicant, City of Muskogee Public Works Department, is requesting approval to rezone property from the R1 Single Family Residential District to the I1 Light Industrial District. Property is located at 318 South Cherokee Street. The reason for the rezoning is to allow a new maintenance headquarters building to be located on the property. Looking at the existing zoning land use within the area, currently the site is zoned R1, single family, and is vacant property. To the north is zoned I1, light industrial, and it was an OG&E substation, which is no longer in use. To the south is zoned I1, light industrial, and it's a vacant building. To the east, back behind the site, abutting B Street, is zoned C3 regional commercial, and it's vacant property. And to the west, which is across Cherokee Street, is also zoned I1, and it's the Public Works facility building. The land use map does indicate light industrial along the railroad tracks and along Cherokee Street. Therefore, this request does comply with the comprehensive plan and land use map adopted by the City of Muskogee. This item's being recommended for approval by both staff and Planning Commission. Be glad to answer any questions.
Seeing that Mr. Riley did not sign up for this, we're going to close the public hearing. Any discussion amongst the council or this committee?
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I have a question. I may just be lost. Were we not at one time talking about moving more of our stuff to the old fairgrounds and more centralizing our services there? And then the only reason I bring that up is if we do this and build another building here, then what's the sense of moving everything to the old fairgrounds and centralizing our city work, public works and everything? I don't understand that, because I thought that was a discussion. Have I been gone so much that we forgot it? I mean, what we're doing? Or did we just abandon the plans that we had a long time ago and it was just a...
No, we've moved some of the warehousing of things out to the fairgrounds. This was to be a workspace, and I'll let Mr. Riley explain further. But the idea is that all the public works staff from the Chicago Street water distribution that we've shut down, and eventually from the environmental control department, which is over by the Hall of Fame, would then move their office space, their workspace, to that area.
Fairgrounds or to this space?
To this space here, directly by the Public Works Director, be our centralized Public Works place for employees. Now, some of our equipment and our material yard, those sorts of things are not necessarily right here, but that's the intention.
Okay, I was just making sure that we weren't going to build a building right there, then later go, hey, we should build out at the old fairgrounds and put everything out there. I hate doing that. So
I agree, and the fairgrounds buildings are a lot more they're in not great shape. So this is a lot more economical. And
I was just thinking that we were going to, if we were building anything, we were going to put it out there and just kind of centralize that around one big area and make that into like our central city area. But it's just a thought process. Okay. I thought that's what we were headed for, but apparently not.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion or questions? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 4.
Consider approval of a preliminary and final plat of Janie's Addition consisting of one lot on 4.33 acres located on the south side of Gibson Street, west of Civitan Park, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Garvin.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the applicant, Anthony Cox, is requesting approval of a preliminary and final plat of Janie's Addition consisting of one lot on 4.33 acres. The property is located on the south side of Gibson Street, and it's just west of Civitan Park. The reason for platting the property is to allow a new single-family dwelling to be built on the property. This request has been before staff, Subdivision Review Committee, and Planning Commission, who's all three recommended approval. Be glad to answer any questions.
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
And the motion carries. Item number 5.
Consider approval of ordinance number 4030A, amending the City of Muskogee Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Administration, Article 2, Municipal Government Organization, by amending Section 2-20, Meetings of the Council, by providing for modified meeting times for the City Council and City Council committees, providing for repealer, severability, and setting an effective date, or take other necessary action.
Just for this committee's information, we have one person who has signed up to speak to this issue. Mr. Tucker, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. As you all may recall, last meeting on October 23rd, the council approved changing the meeting times for council and the Public Works and Finance Committee meetings. However, that approval does require an ordinance change. So based on that particular motion, I've brought forth a proposed ordinance reflecting those changes. As a result, the regular meetings of the council will be on the second and fourth Mondays, beginning at 5:30. If there's a holiday, it'll occur on the following Tuesday. Council committees, including this one and finance, will occur on the first and third Mondays, beginning at 5:30. And so, effectively, the council will meet weekly, either in committee or in council at 5:30 p.m. The other change that we made was to strike a provision relating to a charge of $36 per year for written notices of meetings. State law relating to the Open Meeting Act has changed, making that requirement electronic, and so as a result, the fees have been removed from that. Happy to answer any questions. This will be effective January 1, and so if approved, whenever the clerk prepares the meetings for 2018, whatever year we're in, we will post those meetings under the new times, but the dates will stay the same. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Teresa Rutlinger, I believe you signed up to speak to this one. I think you know we need your name and address in the 5 minutes.
Teresa Rutlinger, 2500 Shelby Court. That's fine if you'd like to change the times, but if you're doing it for people that are working and getting off at 5 o'clock, I think you should also change it instead of 15 minutes before the meeting as far as signing up to speak, to allow them to do it at least 5 minutes before. Just FYI.
Thank you. Any discussion or comments?
Move the approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully?
Yes.
Janie Boydston?
Yes.
Patrick Kale?
Yes.
Marlon Coleman?
Yes.
Wayne Johnson?
Yes.
Ivory Van?
Yes.
Derek Reed?
Yes.
Dan Hall?
Yes.
Mayor Coburn?
Yes.
And the motion carries. Item number 6.
Mr. Chairman, before we move on to the next item, items number 6 and 7 need to be handled in reverse order, relating to the trust indenture first. The second, relating to the ordinance, should occur after we talk about the trust. So if we could, and upon the pleasure of the committee, we'd need a motion to consider those items 6 and 7 in reverse order.
Okay.
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully?
Yes.
Janie Boydston?
Yes.
Patrick Kale?
Yes.
Marlon Coleman?
Yes.
Wayne Johnson?
Yes.
Ivory Van?
Yes.
Derek Reed?
Yes.
Dan Hall?
Yes.
Mayor Coburn?
Yes.
And the motion carries. Item number 7.
Discuss and take action approving the trust indenture, creating the Muskogee Arts and Cultural Authority, accepting a beneficial interest thereto, allocating funding, and further authorizing and directing the mayor and city clerk to execute any necessary documents related thereto.
Mr. Tucker.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, staff has spoken with many of you individually relating to the future of the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame. When we became aware that the financial stability of that entity was in question. One of the things we got from our individual discussions was what can we do to ensure the longevity of what many of us perceive as something extremely important to the Muskogee community. Additionally, the city already has a contract that we have with the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame to provide assistance in the amount of $15,000. However, relating to the difficulties that the Hall of Fame is experiencing, rather than simply amending that contract to provide additional much higher level of funding. One of the issues that came about was how can we continue to assist in the operations of the Hall of Fame, have some level of oversight, and figure out how we can come up with those additional funds. So Mr. Miller and I have met with many of you individually, discussed with Mr. Blair, who is the executive director of both the Hall of Fame and the Muskogee Medical Center Authority. We've met with the chair of the Hall of Fame as well as the chair of the Medical Center Authority. And what we've come up and what is before you today is a viable plan that we think is the best from what we've got to choose from, relating to the continuation of the Hall of Fame idea, the name Hall of Fame. What we're proposing is the creation of a 9-member trust. It would be called the Muskogee Arts and Cultural Authority. It would be populated initially with the trustees of the Muskogee Medical Center Authority, as well as 2 members of the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame Board, with the city of Muskogee, of course, being the beneficiary of that newly created trust. These initial trustees would serve a term commensurate with their term on either the Medical Center Authority or the hospital or the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, whichever the case may be. New trustees would be appointed by the council in accordance with our standard process, which means each council member has the power of appointment. And those new terms would be for a 7-year period. The trust itself would be charged with undertaking or supporting, either through financial or other means, activities within the community which enhance, support, and foster arts, artists, artistic, and other creative or cultural endeavors of all types, mediums, and genres. If this trust is created and you all approve it and accept the beneficial interest, it's only the first step. Discussions have been with the Hall of Fame to assign their intellectual property rights to the Muskogee Arts and Cultural Trust, as well as assign the building lease for the Hall of Fame Museum. Currently, that is a city-owned facility that we have leased to the Hall of Fame. So if the Muskogee Cultural Authority was created, then the Hall of Fame would need to assign that building, and the city would need to approve that assignment to incorporate that into the trust. We will have several other housekeeping matters as it relates to the future of G-Fest and what that looks like. And then the funding for the trust will come from a distribution that the city has received from the Muskogee Medical Center Authority. And that would be $230,000 to distribute for the initial funding to the Muskogee Arts and Cultural Trust. Mr. Blair is here. He has put together a budget for the ongoing operations of the Muskogee Arts and Cultural Trust. He's also here to address any questions you may have, as is Mr. Miller. So with that, I'll turn it over to you all for discussion.
I have 2 people who have signed up just for the information to speak to this issue. However, I have not been a part of these negotiations apparently, because I am still in favor of not doing the Arts and Cultural Trust. However, I am suggesting, these are suggestions, and these are just things I would like to bring up for this committee. Currently, we are doing $15,000 a year for the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame. We've had some money savings when we canceled the contract with Sports Facilities Management, and I would like to take $35,000 from those savings and combine it to increase the funding for the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame to $50,000, which is the same amount of funding that we're doing for the Three Rivers Museum and the War Memorial Museum. That way they would all be funded at the same rate. And as I've thought about this, and I'm thinking if it's time to start allocating the interest earned on this $13 million held by the Medical Trust Authority, I'm thinking it's around $300,000 a year what it earns. And we all know that an educated workforce is critical into retaining our existing businesses and in recruiting other manufacturers. And I think the Muskogee Phoenix recently printed our current school test scores, which were below state averages for math and reading. I think they were at 33% and 53%. So I would like to suggest that we talk about this before we take much more action, that I would like to work with Muskogee Public Schools and Hilldale Public Schools and their respective education foundations and to try and figure out to take this $300,000 and support programs for our elementary schools, especially through pre-K through third grade. And that could be for after-school tutoring, an increase for reading and math classes, back-to-school supplies, increased availability of fruits and vegetables, and provide grants to teachers for specific curriculum teaching materials. I think that's, and the funds could be allocated by percentage of elementary students between Hilldale Public Schools and Muskogee Public Schools, whatever those ratios are. I just think it's so important that we teach our kids how to read and do math. I think that would be a more appropriate for me to help our public schools fund some special programs for our elementary children. I think some guardrails would need to be put in to make sure that these are additional funds, not that allows the schools to, reallocate funds. But I just think that we need to continue to invest in our youth, in our reading skills and our math skills, and I think this would be an appropriate way to do that. That's just what I want to put out there right now. I think we need to support the Music Hall of Fame, but I think we could do that at the same levels that we do our other museums. So with that,
Mr. Chairman, also, in addition to your comments, I think that this is an opportunity for us to now look at whatever entity or type of trust manages this money, that we do look at more community development type projects for use. As the chairman has suggested, certainly I support the Hall of Fame, but one of the things I want us to also look at is how can we use this new influx of cash to be certain that we do things that benefit the community directly. And so some of the things that I was looking at that we may be able to do, and these are also only suggestions, is have a real summer jobs program for disenfranchised and impoverished young people. We always say in Muskogee that our numbers of young people on free or reduced lunch are almost at 100% eligibility, and that's because of their low-income situation. And some of these funds could be used to create a real impactful and targeted summer youth job program. We can have money available also for real-time funding for downtown development. We've been talking about downtown for a long time, and I think as long as we depend on one or two sources to fund our vision for downtown, that's going to always have us crippled. But if we do some of that with the money that we may have access to, that will help us to go a long way. I want us to look at community development. There was a grant that an organization applied to that will help with people who are repeat offenders in the criminal justice system, not because they're actually offending, but because they have inadequate funds to be able to pay attorney fees to help them understand what happens to them when they don't pay their fees that they've been assigned. And so we have people now who are not working because they're in jail for fines they can't pay. Well, they can't pay the fines because they don't work. And that grant was only funded 50%. If we had the ability as a city to fund the other 50%, it could go a long way in terms of making certain that our community goes in the right direction. And then the last two things are making certain that we have an opportunity to look at some type of West Side rehabilitation project. And I say that because a lot of the vacant properties or dilapidated properties that we have are west of town. And I think since we've gone such a long way to develop commercial on the west side, we need to also be certain that we can do things to develop the residential parts of that same side of town. And then finally being certain that we could do some type of small grants program for existing local businesses, because some of them will not be able to come in and make the promises that a big box can make. But at least the city can have some small opportunity to be able to help those businesses, not only to stay afloat, but to stay local and to stay operational here in Muskogee.
I have two citizens wishing to address this issue.
Could I make
Sure.
an observation?
Yes, sir.
Are you two gentlemen speaking of any potential monies from the medical, the trust?
There's $13 million, to understand it. And what I'm thinking is probably going to earn interest and dividends should be about $300,000. And I'm just saying that I would like to see that more for our education or something, or a combination, or whatever anybody else on this committee or council might be interested in.
I applaud both of you, both of your suggestions. It's something to seriously take a look at. Going to the trust, my thoughts are that to have a vehicle in it, and we've talked about bringing in the Civic Center or the Roxy under that umbrella of a trust at some point. My thoughts are, and first I appreciate the work that staff's putting together and getting this document put together, and the whole point. I'd like to, whether it's this body or we set up a committee or something, I'd like to carefully look at the language and how we put this trust together right up front. I'd like to carefully look right up front. Do we want to have citizen members? Do we want to have council members on this trust? Do we want to have some of the hospital trust members on this trust, a combination of all of them or what have you? I think that's something to be considered. Also, I think for economies of scale, it seems to me, and I'm not suggesting what we do, I'm just suggesting things we can think of. It seems to me that if we were to put the Hall of Fame and the Civic Center and the Roxy under the same management, we'd get economies of scale in money spent to oversee these venues. Maybe one manager could oversee the workings of all three. Maybe the consideration could be made that we move the current location of the Hall of Fame into the Civic Center, a nice, bright, shiny venue, maybe put our guitars in glass cases on the wall or what have you. But I think we ought to do all we can do to make our money get our biggest bang for our buck. And if we can manage all these facilities as one, and thank you, and make our money go a little bit longer, and move the Hall of Fame over, I think we might get some economies of a scale that will help in all three of those endeavors. And I'm not suggesting that's the way we need to do it, but I would like to put a little bit more thought into the kickoff of this trust and how it might be set up and what the committees might look like, and what direction we're going to head with it.
We started off with, the intent was, how do we save the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame? That's what kind of started the discussions. And then I'd asked for, can we get the financials, from the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame, and can we get the financials from the Muskogee Municipal Authority? And what it done is it opened my eyes to a lot of things, and as I know, it has other council. And we've started a lot of discussions. But I think it has opened up, for me, it's opened up more questions than it has answers. And I think we have got a lot of ideas, but it's also opened a lot more questions. Like what is the regulations on the Muskogee Municipal Authority and the ties to that funding, to that.
You mean the medical center?
Medical center, medical center authority funding. What will that potential revenue be? How much funding will it really take to sustain the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame? I think there's a lot of questions, more so than what there is answers at this point. I would make a motion and I really do appreciate the diligent work of Roy and the city manager putting together, a great plan of what we had asked for. Put together something where we can save the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame, but it really it opened up a lot of things that I think need to have further review, because I really think the idea of another trust out here and a board, I don't know that it needs to be one and the same, and I think the same people on that board or trust are not ideally the same. What I would recommend is if the city manager could work with the existing Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame and look at essential funding to maintain that for the next 2 months while we look at options. And during that time, we research all those options and put together a full plan of where we would move forward.
I assume that was a motion?
Yes.
Okay. Before we ask for a second, I want to ask Ren Stratton if she'll come to the podium, and we'll get the public comment. And I think name and address, please.
Ren Stratton, 324 North Camden Place. Before I say anything, I always have to say thank you guys so much for your service. I know how hard this is, and I know how hard you're taking seriously making decisions. So I really appreciate you. I'm processing the conversation that just happened. When we woke up and read this as an agenda item, it kind of took those of us who live in the arts world, and there are others leaders here, kind of by surprise, because we knew nothing about it, had not had any conversations. So had it read the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame Authority, it would have probably felt a little more transparent, right? But the way it reads is a little... so really all I had were questions, but based on this conversation and Mr. Johnson's recommendations, I don't really think I need to ask them. I think you guys are asking yourselves those same questions. I do think both of what you guys said is intriguing, though. If the citizens of Muskogee are the beneficiaries of that authority, as I assume they are, that makes a whole lot more sense. Thank you.
Teresa Rutlinger.
Teresa Rutlinger, 2500 Shelby Court.
I didn't even have to ask, did I?
I'm in total agreement with the discussions that have been going on amongst yourselves and with what Ren Stratton just said. I also would like to go and see more than just people that are normally on the boards become on the boards. I think you definitely need citizen input on this. And please continue questioning and delving, and I think you'll come up with the right decision.
Thank you. So any other? I have a motion. Do I have a second, or do we want to do some more discussion?
Can we restate the motion, please?
Yeah, because I'm kind of lost because I know Councilman Gawley has some thought process on this, and I'm not sure if it tied in to where Councilman Kale and Johnson was and how close those were, because you were more education oriented and they're more moving stuff to the Civic Center and stuff. It was all kind of bunched up. So I'm kind of wanting to know what this...
Well, I guess what my motion would be is kind of taking what all their thoughts are, because I like goalies, I like Marlins, I like all of them. I mean, I think we got a lot of good thoughts,
and there's probably
we can't all process them tonight. I think we need more time to process them. So I think it's going to take more than what just one meeting can do. So my motion would be that we ask the city manager to work with the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame to find out what essential operational cost would be to fund that for the next 2 months. And then he would bring back to us, or we would come back at another meeting with a recommendation.
Do we want to have a small subcommittee to discuss some of these issues, that other options for creating a different trust for education or through public service or whatever, anybody else? Do we want to have a small committee for that, or do we want to do that as a group? I have no different.
I'd like to do it as a group so we all can know everybody's thoughts, because
I would too.
Okay. Because there is a vast things going through everybody's head here on what they want done, and I'd like to have all that information from those people as we go forward.
So do we want to, the motion is to table this for 2 months?
Do we need to go that far?
And a recommendation for the city manager to work to semi-fund the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame for 2 months during this time frame.
So, if you don't mind, just on the time frame clarification, we don't have a meeting in December after about December 7th or 8th. So 2 months would put us in 2 months from now is January 3rd.
Middle of January.
Yeah, 6th.
Are you talking about recommending or directing staff to bring back an agenda item for Monday to look at 2 months of funding for the Hall of Fame?
Yes.
Okay, that's
Very
what I
good.
understood
Okay.
too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
And then while we're discovering what we're going to do in the future, the Hall of Fame can continue to operate.
Correct.
Is that?
I second that.
Okay. All right.
Thank you for that cleanup, Roy.
So I have a motion and a second. Clear as mud. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Ban.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 6. Now, do we still need to discuss number 6? Mr.
We need it read, and then we'll take no action. No action.
Okay.
Consider approval of ordinance number 4029A, amending the City of Muskogee Code of Ordinances by creating Section 91-102, Muskogee Arts and Cultural Authority, within Article 1, Establishment and Recognition of Chapter 91, Public Trust, providing for repealer, severability, and declaring an emergency.
No action necessary?
That's correct.
Okay. Is there no action necessary? Item number 8.
Discuss and provide direction to staff on existing permitting procedures required of new or expanded hospital or ambulatory surgical care centers as set forth in City Code 22-674 and 22-675.
Reverend Coleman.
As we had discussed several weeks back, Mr. Tucker was going to present us with some information that we needed regarding how we issue certificates for hospitals that operate in the city of Muskogee. At the time that the original certificate was designed, it was in the best interest of the city because the city actually owned and operated a hospital. Since that time, we've gone through approximately, I think it's 3 changes of hands. From Muskogee to Capella, from Capella to St. Francis. And so what I'd like us to be able to do tonight is take action to be certain that others who desire to provide services in Muskogee can do so without impediment. Because as it exists now, they cannot. But if we do away with the ordinance, and the information is in front of us tonight, which shows larger cities that do not have a certificate of special need just for a hospital, I think that we can accomplish whatever we need to accomplish through certificates or zoning or whatever through our existing planning and zoning department without the city having to require an additional step in the event that other medical services desire to provide services here in Muskogee. One of the things that I'm also looking at by accomplishing this is being certain that not only will those people consider coming to Muskogee, but we assume if they did come to Muskogee, that will provide some level of job opportunity in the medical field for people that are not able to get it by having the restriction to have only one hospital within so many miles of the existing structure. And so my motion would be to remove what we currently have in favor of not requiring a certificate for hospitals to operate in the city limits.
Is that the certificate of need?
Yes.
Certificate of need.
So that would effectively be direction to staff to revise the ordinance and bring it back.
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking when we originally did that, that was almost like a state law that you had to have a certificate of need before you could establish that. And then, again, that's been
Right.
10, 11 years
Right,
ago.
yeah. That's not the case.
And then the fee in the study, like $10,000.
We require a $10,000 fee to be deposited, which will cover staff time as well as part of the fee for the study. If any additional costs are expended for that study, the applicant is required to pay those additional. But there's effectively like a $10,000 deposit that's required by the ordinance to pay for staff time and also for the feasibility study.
Okay, so it was not a state statute way back then?
No.
Okay.
No.
And got to refresh this old man's memory.
Sure. One of the things that we had, one of the reasons why this has remained on the books, we had, if you will remember when we did the big hospital lease with Capella, there was a non-compete agreement within that original lease, and that helped, having this ordinance in place helped us comply with that non-compete agreement. That, of course, did not transfer to the St. Francis assignment.
That's where
So,
I'm headed.
yeah, right. So we don't have that in place anymore. And what the council directed staff to do was to look at what other cities are doing, whether they're requiring that or not. And I'll draw your attention to Midwest City, Norman, and Stillwater. Their ordinances were almost identical to the one that we have, which requires a feasibility and or impact study to effectively have the applicant prove that there is a need for a new hospital or an expansion or an ambulatory care center, effectively, which is somewhere where a patient will stay overnight. The difference being is that our $10,000 deposit, if the feasibility study was less expensive than that, then it would be refunded. There was no requirement that the application fee be conditioned upon the amount of the capital improvement. Those other cities that we have do have that requirement where, regardless of the cost of the feasibility study, their application fee is 1% of the capital, the cost of capital for building the new hospital or expanding it. So that's from $1,000 minimum to $75,000. So in that regard, we're much more reasonable. But as Committee Member Coleman mentioned, the lion's share of the larger cities don't have any regulations. The exception being several in the western part of the state, like Oklahoma City and Lawton, who are not concerned with feasibility of allowing a new particular hospital, but merely the location so that it does not impact any of the groundwater. Most of the western state gets their potable water through groundwater, whereas over in the eastern part, it's a lot of surface water. So those requirements merely zoning for those larger cities.
Okay. So I have a motion.
Move
Say
for
again.
approval.
Do we not already have it?
All right. Marlon Coleman
And I'll second it.
made a motion to remove this ordinance. Is that correct, Mr. Tucker?
To direct staff to bring back modification of the existing ordinance, removing the feasibility requirements.
I have a motion and a second.
Could I ask a question? As I sit here today, I'm sure there's pros and cons to this. Maybe not. Could you supply a list of potential pros and cons that we can review?
Sure.
Before we make a vote?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Tonight or?
Oh, no.
When we actually look at the ordinance?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
So I have a motion and a second to direct staff to revise the ordinance. Is that correct?
That's
roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 9.
Consider approval of lowest and best bid from Rarig Pacific Company in the amount of $552.50 per tank for purchase of 81 2-cubic yard containers, rear loading for fiscal year 2017-2018, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Riley, thanks for your patience.
Mr. Chairman and committee, this is our this is for our commercial dumpsters. We budgeted $45,000 for this year. The low bid was $552, which is or $522.90, which was 1% higher than last year. We're happy with the bid. We put out 109 of these last year. We've had no problems. We're very happy with them. They're the plastic 2-yard dumpsters, and easier to move around, and they are not suffering much damage at all, and we're very pleased with them. We recommend approval.
Move for approval.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes.
And motion carries. Item number 10.
Receive report regarding the installation of the new grill at Rotary Park.
Mr. Van. Where are you going?
Y'all want me to sit up here on this? I'll sit up here.
You leaving me?
Go down
Feel
there.
jilted.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank Marshall Osmond, the city manager secretary, for putting this together for me. And I just thought sometime every now and then we need to bring things that we're doing here in our community. And I thought today would be a good day to do it. And we've done quite a few improvements at Rotary Park. And we've just got through putting a barbecue grill over there. And by the funding, these are the donors right here: Derek Reed, Julie Hoffman, Kelly Garrett, Fred Hogle, Vicki Spaulding, Ivory Van, Dolan Locke, Lynn Wagner Wallace, Holloway, Updike and Bellum, and Perline Boyati. They spent their money on the grill, and flip it to the grill.
Oh.
This is the grill here, and I think it's a nice addition to Rotary Park. And thanks to Councilman Derek Reed also. He's in our ward. This is in Ward 3. And I'd like to thank him for all his support. And go ahead to the next slide. This right here at Rotary Park is, if you look to the far left, you see the basketball court. Well, this is Mr. Gully's idea right here, and we appreciate it, Mr. Gully. Remember when they done Spaulding Park, they resurfaced it, and you brought this to our attention because you were driving over here by it, and that's the new basketball court. You see how nice it looks? And also, in our budget planning sessions, this was one of the items that we brought to the committee for the bleachers. Those kids now don't have to sit on the ground when they play basketball. They can sit up there on the bleachers and just relax and watch each other play. Okay, community service team clean up illegal dump sites. Okay, go back, Mr. Okay, this is the project this past last week that the community Roy's team, the community service here in Muskogee, with Miss Natalie Gaskin. She's one of the directors there that go out with the crews every day for the community service. You see how the alley looked on these two left pictures? Now you see how it looks after it's all finished. That's a nice looking job. I think the community service does very, very good work. That's one of our best services here in Muskogee. I mean, it adds to a value to things. And they clean up a lot of stuff here in Muskogee. We had a dump site over here on 9th and Lincoln last week. And I tell you what, that was a mess. I mean, really, it was really a mess. I didn't show it on here, but it was. Okay, Mr. Gordon. And this right here is when me and Mr. Miller, I didn't get a picture of when we was on the truck. It was on video. But we went out with the sanitation department, and we rode on the back of the truck, and we know how the trash route runs and and like I say, I was telling the last time about the people brought us cookies and water out. Mr. Kale said he paid them to do it for us.
You funded that project, did you?
Mr. Kale funded that project for us. We'd like to thank you for funding that project for us, Mr. Kale. But
we got a lot of good citizens.
Yes, we do. And that's one of the pictures that we took. And, and I just thought I'd bring this today. And like I say, me and Councilman Reed, we're in the same ward, and we're all here up here on this as a team. So this is all our work, not Ivory Van. This is not Robinson Park, as you can see today. This is everybody's work up here today that I'm proud of. So that's what I just thought I'd bring to your attention today, and I thank everybody for participating.
Thank you, Mr. Van.
I just want to know if we got a waiver on Ivory riding on the back of a truck before he got up there.
You know we did.
Okay.
All I noticed is everybody else had work boots on except one. But I'm going to move on and say I have one citizen wishing to address this committee. Mr. Van?
Oh, okay.
Now, I probably need to remind you I need your name and address, don't I? Okay. For the record, then, your name and address, please, sir.
Ivory Van, I'm so used to saying that, 4338 Columbus Street. The reason I come up here today is I was going to read something, and it has to do with the rally. Descendants of the Freeman and the supporters will gather rally in Tulsa with former Congressman Barney Frank, November 11th, 2017. Descendants of the Freemen of the 5 tribes and their supporters will gather at the John Hope Franklin Reconciliation Park, 321 North Detroit, Tulsa, Oklahoma, between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. to hear the keynote speaker, former Congressman Barney Frank. The purpose of the gathering is to call the attention to the discrimination faced by black Freeman tribal members and descendants of the Freeman tribal members of both federally recognized tribes and the U.S. government. We encourage attendees to bring signs asking for enforcement of the 1866 Treaty of the Freeman for the Freeman descendants. The general public is invited to attend. This is a free event. Contact Eli Grayson, 918-730-1133. Email eligrayson@hotmail.com or Marilyn Van, mkvan@hotmail.com. Her number is 405-227-9810 for additional information. And the reason I'm bringing this to your attention today is the reason we're rallying is because the Cherokee Freemen, they have their citizenship. The rest of the tribes don't have the citizenship. So we're going to have a rally in Tulsa to bring this to the other tribes' attention, because my grandmother, she was a Creek Freeman. If you don't know what a Creek Freeman is, a Creek Freeman was an Indian slave. Indians had slaves just like white people did back in the day. And so the Cherokees, as you noticed, they just won their lawsuit, and now they are members, full members of the Cherokee Nation. So as I am a Creek and the rest of the Chickasaw and the other tribes, we want the same equal opportunity to have our citizenship and to get those benefits and rights as a citizen of the nation. So this is what this is about, and I definitely will be there, and I miss Veterans Day here in Muskogee, but this is very important to me and to other people. And I went to the radio station yesterday in 101.7, and what's the name? Katie and her husband, it was so nice to me, and I've done the same thing on the radio station. I've done the same thing on the radio station, but I almost wanted to really break down and sing a country song, but they wouldn't let me do that. But I had a good time, and I thanked them for their kindness, and I thanked them for letting me come to read this yesterday at the radio station. So that's what this is about. So if anybody can come out on this day to back up, give us a support, we'd like to thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van.
I know it's out of order, but can I help Mr. Van out? I know it's out of order.
For you, yes.
I just want to save the day for Katie. That is not her husband.
I didn't know. On the radio.
Okay, we've made that official correction.
No, Smooth is sitting back there, and I didn't want to get anything started.
All right, very good. Seeing no further business, this committee is adjourned.
We will now call to order the Muskogee City Council for a special called meeting. Roll call, please.
Mayor Bob Coburn.
Here.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Here.
Dan Hall.
Here.
Marlon Coleman.
Here.
Janie Boydston.
Here.
Wayne Johnson.
Here.
Patrick Kale.
Here.
Ivory Van.
Here.
Derek Reed.
Here.
Item number 1.
Consider approval to authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute a lease purchase agreement with the Muskogee Medical Center Authority not to exceed the amount of $825,000 to purchase and equip new police patrol vehicles or take other necessary action.
Mr. Eskridge.
Mayor, Council, this agreement will allow us to buy approximately 30 police cars plus equipment, lights, cages, the standard equipment for police units. There is some urgency with this, but I'm going to let Mr. Swepson talk about the bid process and why the timing of this, and perhaps the manager has some things that he wants to say about the funding as well. So,
good evening, members of the council. As Mr. Eskridge said, we are under a little time crunch here. The state contract pricing is going to go up in approximately 10 days on us, so we're trying to beat that deadline. We have to have a couple extra days there to have our order submitted. The price per car is going to go up about $500 per car, so we'd save about $15,000 by beating that deadline, and that's about half the price of one car, so it's a pretty significant savings to the city. The vehicles will be purchased off of the current state contract pricing, and that's the reason for the urgency.
It's my understanding that we're going to install the light bars and all that ourselves and not get hung up in Tulsa this time?
That is correct. That has been done in the past here in Muskogee, and we're going to try to do that and be a little more efficient than the problems we ran into last time. And that'll save us approximately $1,200 to $1,500 per car as well by doing it ourselves. Plus gives us the familiarity of where every piece of equipment is located and ensure standardization that everything is mounted in the same location and So when we go to work on it, we're not having to hunt where this little item was placed on this particular one, because it can vary if the same person's not doing it each time.
Very good.
I'm excited to hear about this because it's time that we update our fleet for our police department, and plus that we have some way of getting rid of cars and not having them on our fleet for 15 years. I don't think that's a very safe process that we have. I know that it was a financial problem, but maybe we can get that rectified as we go forward and rotate our fleet out for our police officers a little faster. I do like the fact that we are doing it in-house this time, some of the light bars and stuff. I like that. And guys, this is a real good price on these cars, because trust me, as someone who has to purchase one or two versus their 30, they do get pricey. And this is a good price for us.
Move the approval.
Second it.
We have two other people that have signed up that would like to speak to it. And Mr. Miller, would you like to make comment as well?
Well, I'd love to have the public comment.
Okay. Teresa Rutlinger, you had signed up to speak to this item. Name and telephone number.
Teresa, telephone number this time.
What? Read it, Rick.
In case people want to call you.
This is new.
I got embarrassed
now.
Yeah, that was just
I hate people that
a
have
personal
that.
request.
Well,
Teresa Rutlinger, 2500 Shelby Court. Is this the way we normally go ahead and purchase our police cars through the Muskogee Medical Center Authority? Is this a new thing that we're doing this year? Is this just going to be kind of a loan from them and then we go ahead and pay them back? Or how is this working? I'm a little bit confused on this.
This is very similar to how we made our last purchase of police vehicles through a lease purchase. In this case, we're using the Muskogee Medical Center Authority because the city, as the beneficiary of that trust, basically we're paying interest to ourselves in this case, and we're getting a very competitive interest rate. So I've talked to some of the bankers in town. They understand why we are pursuing a lease purchase through this medium rather than through a commercial entity. And but yes, the lease purchase is how we have done our purchases of police vehicles in the past, and yes, we have a payment schedule to pay
Over
these off over
how long a period of time?
Over 5 years.
5 years.
Yes.
And this is normal. So, I mean, it's all right to use the Muskogee Medical Center Authority money. I mean, I'm just when it says medical, I just assume that it's for the well-being of. I know it's a broad spectrum, I guess you're going to say, because it's the police force, it's helping the people, but I'm thinking more of a health medical type thing.
I won't speak too much on behalf of them. This is, again, not a grant. This is a loan, and so they see it as an investment. They invest their money how they see fit, and they see the city as a guarantor of this loan.
So they're charging interest of
They're
some
charging
sort.
interest,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
Yes.
At a competitive or a little bit less than competitive?
It is better than what we would get at a commercial lending institution.
Would we like Mr. Blair to speak to that, or?
Sure. Jim Blair, I'm Executive Director of the Muskogee Medical Center Authority. As we have, of course, 7 trustees, board of trustees, and 3 of those serve as the investment committee and the finance committee. And in the past, and their investment policy has served them well, has avoided equity investments and focused only on FDIC insured or treasury-backed investments. 6 years ago, we stepped outside of that with the board's approval to loan $4.5 million to the city of Muskogee to pay off some utility bonds at a rate of 3.25%. So those just were paid off last month. The board of trustees, they take their fiduciary responsibility very serious in what they do. Looking at a rate of 2.75, when you compare that to a bank CD or a treasury-backed agency, it's a lot better, and they see this as a great investment. It's looked at strictly as an investment and not as a grant or any other. It's strictly would fall right into what they want to accomplish investment-wise, and it's a whole lot better return than what you can see getting in the banks.
So
Thank you, sir.
This is a win-win for both parties.
Right. Wait a minute. I guess you're up here again. We're going to say Ren Stratton had signed up to speak to this item. Do you want to?
That's because I know Jim's going to answer my question.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just saving him some trouble. Ren Stratton, 324 North Camden Place. Because I've had lots of questions, and I know there are people listening, I was just going to ask for some clarification. So when was the authority established?
1966.
To do what?
It was to run the hospital.
Okay. And so then when we leased, it became a different mission. Has that evolved?
The current function of the authority is to be the landlord of the current lease with St. Francis Hospital, and as the Attorney General set out 10 years ago, to meet the responsibilities and liabilities, obligations of the trust.
Okay. So there is nothing in the trust indentureship, I don't know if I said that word right, that says that it has to go to a specific thing other than the citizens of Muskogee as the beneficiaries. True statement?
The sole beneficiary of the trust is the city of Muskogee, and as the Attorney General set out in their memo 10 years ago, that the city of Muskogee, any distribution, this is not a distribution, this is a loan. So this is strictly on the investment side of it, looking at the investment policy and investment. But as far as what those funds can be used for, they are public funds, and it's for anything distributed to the city could be used for any lawful use.
By drugs, okay. So, and you understand the conversation has been a lot today about sorting out the City of Muskogee Hospital Foundation versus the Muskogee, so we just need to keep sorting that through and make sure we're all talking about the same thing. But that is the same entity that we were talking about earlier in terms of the...
No.
No. Explain
The
that.
Muskogee Medical Center Authority is a city trust, with the city as the sole beneficiary of that authority. Muskogee Medical Foundation is a public foundation established, I think, in the 1980s by the hospital, with a separate board, and there is not the beneficiary are the citizens of Muskogee to meet health and welfare.
So there is a mission statement
of that entity, yes.
Okay, but the entity we were talking about in terms of the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame, which one was that?
That is the proposed new authority would be a city trust. Muskogee Arts and Culture Authority would be a city trust.
Right. Funded by
the city of Muskogee, not by...
Through a distribution from the Muskogee Medical Center Authority.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Thank you. That'll do it.
Okay.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. We have a motion and a second regarding item 1. Mr. Miller.
And I did have one thing I'd like to say that I want to thank the council because this has been a long-standing issue with the police vehicles that we've expected them to last 15 years. And this action that you're taking tonight will basically cut the age of our fleet, the average age, in half. We can get rid of some 2003, 2004, 2005 vehicles that our patrolmen are driving. And this would not have happened if you guys hadn't taken some steps in the last few months to make it possible for people to feel happy to lend us the money to do it. And so I think this is a very good step in the right direction. I want to thank you guys for doing it.
You know, if we could keep those cars another 10 years, we'd have classics in our fleet.
Then we'd want to build a museum for them. We'd have to figure out where the funding would come from.
Before
Could
I go,
be a first, though.
The one thing I want you to understand, all of these cars are going to patrol officers. They're going to the people in, none of the administrative staff will be getting new cars. These are all going to people in the field in patrol division. So that's where they're going. And what we'll do is that will remove quite a few number of cars that are 03s, 05s, but even at that, some of those will be kept. One of them will be kept for a backup pool car for K9. So this is a great infusion in terms of carrying out our mission and being able to protect the community and do what we need to do as an agency. And I really appreciate what the manager has done in trying to accomplish this, because he started on this a long time ago, and he really has taken this seriously. So I really appreciate what he's done, and I appreciate you guys very much too. So thank you all. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Chief. Again, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments on this item? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor James Scully.
Yes.
Janie Boydston.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Marlon Coleman.
Yes.
Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Coburn.
Yes, motion carries, and that concludes your agenda. Thank you.